MDMYF family. Welcome back to another episode of the Tormente podcast. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mia. I'm a part of the greeting team here at MDMYF, and I'm so happy to be recording the third episode of the Tormente podcast. And today, I'm honored to be recording this episode with Pastor Joe.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be a part of this third episode where we are breaking down all these storms in our mind. And it's just been a powerful time in our ministry in this series where we have just been really diving into those problems that everyone has. So, we want to invite you that if you have not heard the first two episodes, go and listen to them on our YouTube channel or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you prefer. Go and listen to them. You can't miss out. This is just a continuation of everything that we've been speaking on. So don't miss out. Go listen to them if you haven't already heard them. We want you to be a part of it. It's like, we've been listening to this for weeks now, and it's like if you hear a series or if you're watching a series, you don't want to miss an episode, because if you miss an episode, you're not going to know what's happening. So you're going to feel lost. So if you haven't already heard them, go hear them. Awesome.
And also, if you've been coming on Sundays or just watching online on our YouTube channel, you know that Pastor Nick has been preaching on his new series, Tormente. So just as Pastor Joe said, it's been all about the mind, the struggles that we go through in our minds as human beings, but he's also been equipping us on how we can overcome these battles in our minds. So if you haven't been able to come to church or you haven't been connecting online, we invite you tomorrow to our Sunday service at 10 a.m. And again, if you can't make it, you can tune in on our YouTube channel, MDMYF, where you can see it live, so you can be a part of what God is doing through this series. Now, to introduce the topic of the podcast, Pastor Joe, I'm super excited about this topic that's going to be mental burnout.
Yes.
And I think that it's become such a common human experience, right? Especially in today's society, where we're just so driven by the doing of things.
Yes.
And I believe that it's also going to help everyone, right? Because we all help, we all serve at some capacity in some area of our lives, whether it's in ministry, in your family, at your work. And it's so easy to overextend ourselves.
Exactly.
And in the helping and the serving and the working, we can forget about ourselves and our mental well-being, right? And if we are not in a constant state of filling ourselves or just practicing certain protective measures, we can easily become burnt out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So before going any deeper into what we're talking about, I want you to tell us what exactly is mental burnout and how have you seen it in your life?
Yeah, of course. So it's so basic. We're going to go to Google. And the basic Google definition of what mental burnout is burnout is a state of complete mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion caused by prolonged or excessive stress. So if you've been feeling fatigued, like exhausted, sluggish, where even the simplest of tasks just feel so heavy over you, you could be experiencing mental burnout. So something that I think about for all of you that like an image in your mind, I see things in my mind a lot. Through images. And one of the things whenever we were preparing on this topic that came to mind is whenever somebody's burning rubber, whenever somebody's burning a tire, quemando llanta, that's how I would see it. You're driving that car, but you're stationary in one place. You have your gear on park, and you're just pressing your accelerator, and you're just burning that tire. And what is happening in that moment is that you have this vehicle that has all the capacity to get you somewhere, but yet you're not going anywhere. You're just burning your tire out. And what is that burning of the tire causing? It's causing noise. It's causing smoke to fill your surrounding.
Yeah.
And in that moment, there's no clarity. You're not going anywhere. So when I'm thinking of mental burnout, I feel like I'm in my stationary car, trying to press the accelerator, trying to get to where God has called me to be, trying to be the mother God has called me to be, trying to be the wife God has called me to be. Or maybe you as a husband, you're trying to be the husband God has called you to be, the man of God has called you to be, but you just feel like you're at a standstill and you're just burning tired. And I feel like that's mental burnout. You're trying to get to a place, but you're not being effective in what you're doing. And now you have smoke surrounding you because you've just been burning out for so long, and you don't have a clarity to where you're going. You don't have a clear vision. So, becoming a new mom, I really experienced this because it's something that, I mean, I've experienced it in the past before, but it never really hit me till I became a parent, till I became a mom, because there your task multiply by like 10,000.
Yeah.
So before I was able to, work a full-time job, do a full-time ministry, serve in whatever area I needed to serve in. And I was just like, great. I'm just running along. I'm just driving my car, doing what I got to do. But then I had kids. Your body changes so much as a woman after having a child. It goes through so much trauma. And I hit kind of like a wall, and I was like, oh my God, my kids require so much out of me. This is probably TMI, but it's like you're trying to serve, you're trying to do something, and then you're like, oh gosh, my breasts are hurting because I got to go breastfeed my child. Oh, I have to do this. Your body's aching. You're still going through so many transitions within yourself. And I hit a point where I was like, I'm sleep deprived. I've barely ingested any food. This child is crying its lungs out. And you just have to reach a point where you're like, I'm burned out. I can't keep overextending myself. So of course I played bass, I translated, I worked a full-time job, and I could do that like day in and day out like nothing. But once a kid came along, I had to really put things into perspective. Now I have this little tiny human being that requires so much out of me. And it's not that I'm going to stop serving, and it's not that my child is my excuse not to do something, but I also have to put things into perspective so that I won't be dragging my feet all along. Because again, everything that I do, or everything that, we do in ministry, we do it because it's our joy. It's a joy to serve. And I don't ever want it to become something where I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to do this anymore. So I came to Miguel, and I was like, hey, you know what? If you're going to put me to play bass, put me to play bass every other week, or if it's absolutely necessary. If not, let the other bass players play bass. And also I started to try and lift up people to help me translate, because translating back-to-back services, or it gets exhausting and overwhelming. And again, as a parent, you now have these two little kids, and you're like, okay, where are they? Who has them? Okay, you're trying to find care for them. So you really have to put things into perspective. So I really had to put things on a balance and just say, okay, I'm still a mom, but because I'm a mom, it doesn't mean that I'm also not the woman of God that God has called me to be. It doesn't mean that my ministry stops. It doesn't mean that I can't preach anymore, or that I can't play bass anymore, or that I can't translate anymore. It just means I have to put things on a balance, and I have to know how to balance those things out. So it was hard because you're so used to doing so many things at all times, but I found myself not being effective. I found myself not being efficient in any area. And I got to a point where I was so overwhelmed because, of course, after having two kids, doing ministry, full-time work, and 1,000 other things, I felt overwhelmed. And I just caught myself one day, and I was like, I snapped at my 1-year-old for no reason. I was like, because he was messing with my daughter, and they're kids, they don't know what they're doing. And I was just like, and I spanked his butt, and I was like, stop messing with your sister. And at that point I saw it was not an out of body experience, but it's almost like in my subconscious, I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I walked away. I cried for a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta cry it out.
I cried it out, and I was like, I do not want to be this person. I do not want to be the mom that is snapping at her child because of how overwhelmed she is, because she is feeling stressed over 2-hour drives every which way, because she's feeling overwhelmed because she feels like she can't handle this. So at that point, I was like, I can't do this. I have to rearrange certain things. So it takes a lot. But I also want to do things effectively. I want to be efficient in what I'm doing. I don't want to try and do 1,000 things, but not be 100% in any of them. I'd rather do 2 things and do those 2 things with excellence than leave 10 things at task at halfway done. Yeah. So I think it's really, really important to acknowledge, you know, when we are carrying a load that is bigger than ourselves, something that maybe God hasn't called you to do, and you're just trying to overextend yourself because maybe you're trying to please somebody, maybe because you're trying to, oh, you know, this person, I'm just going to help them. No, you got to learn, you know, and we're going to get a little more into it about setting boundaries and everything, but so.
I love that you talked about talking to Miguel and having, because that's you setting boundaries, and sometimes boundaries can feel selfish at times. Saying no can feel selfish, which is something that you and I were talking about. But boundaries is simply, okay, what am I going to accept? What am I not going to accept?
Exactly.
And I love that you spoke about that, because that's really important, right? Whenever you have all these things on your plate. And I also like that you talked about being effective, because then what's the point? Why are you doing it, right? And that recently just happened to me with school. It's my first semester of grad school, right? It's a lot more responsibilities, more workload. And I also started a new job that's also more demanding, a little bit more challenging. So it's 2 very big changes in my life. And I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was like, I feel like I don't know what I've learned. In school, I'm like, I feel like I'm simply just like sitting down, reading a book just to get it done, get through it. But why am I doing this? It's kind of like it lost its purpose, because my work was literally taking over my whole life. And I'm like, okay, and that's why it's also important, which is something that we're going to talk about. It's letting it be God's plan and knowing your purpose, right? Because that's going to help you be more clear and stand firm on your priorities and your yeses. And I was listening to a podcast earlier, and this counselor was talking about boundaries, and she said when your yeses are clear, your no's will also be clear. So when you know what you're supposed to be doing, what God has called you to do, where you're supposed to be, you're going to be clear about the no's, right? And so that took a hard conversation, hard for me, because it was something that, like, I don't think I've really ever had to do that before, like with a boss. And so I was like a little bit nervous to have the conversation, but I basically had to be clear about boundaries. I was like, hey, I can't work full time. I don't know what I was thinking. And you know what's crazy? Whenever he first hired me, we talked about like part-time, full-time. And at first we were clear on like doing part-time, but then I was like, you know what? I want to do full-time. I can do it. Right. I was like on my way to work, literally just exactly that, burnt out, just no joy. No, I was like, what even is like the meaning of life? Like, literally, what am I doing? I was so angry with the world. And I was just not being effective at anything. And so it took for me to have that conversation with him and just be clear about, hey, these are the days that I can work. School, right? That's not a question for me. That has to come first, because that's tied to what God has called me to do. That's tied to my purpose. And I know that this is what he wants me to be doing, right? And so and I was like, for me to be 100% effective and to meet your expectations, then this is what I'm going to need.
Exactly.
So,
And I think something that you just said right now, too, is whenever you get burnt out and you overextend yourself and you try to put too much on your plate, you're going to become a zombie. You're just going to run through the motions of things, and then you just get familiar with things. So then now if whether it's ministry work, whatever it is, then you just get so familiar with God that you're just running through the motions of things. And now again, it goes back to being effective. Now I'm not being effective. I'm not reaching a soul because I'm just showing up to a service, receiving, going home, being a zombie, no joy, no happiness, and you're just kind of going through it. So that's why it's so important to speak about, you know, the mental burnout too. And we're going to speak a little bit of how to avoid it, how you can avoid reaching the place where you're just now that zombie in that car, just pressing the accelerator. I can see the zombie in my head. Just like,
I did look like a zombie. You know what's, I know we have to get into the point, but literally whenever those first few days that I was like so burnt out, and I was like, I didn't even want to get ready in the morning. Like I put my hair up, no makeup, no nothing, and you could see like my under eyes were so dark and I just looked a mess. And I remember like after I had that conversation with my boss, I came in the following week, I had my hair straightened, I had a little bit of makeup on, and even
I feel better.
Yeah, he looked at me, he was like, wow, you look so fresh. I'm like, thank you. But it's like the difference because I literally looked like a zombie. I looked so bad. I was just so tired. Like even that getting up in the morning was just such a struggle.
It was just an outer projection of what was going on inside. So it's like
that's
a lot
really good.
And a lot of the times, you know, when I'm 100% tired. My child did not sleep last night. So I was telling me, I was like, man, maybe I should have kind of done my hair or something. But I was just so tired this morning. I'm like, I got to go to work. I got to get there. I can't be late. You know, let's go. So it's just like your outer experience will, you know, project kind of what's going on. So a lot of the times, if you look at a person and you know, you're like, oh man, this person's going through something because you can see it. So it's not, a lot of the times you can try to hide the burnout. You can try to hide the things, the storms that are going on inside of your mind, inside of your head. You're like, oh no, nobody sees me in here. Nobody sees my head. Nobody sees what's going on, my thoughts, my inner thoughts. But your outer projection,
on the outside,
it's going to be reflected. So
absolutely. So getting into that first point, right? As we said, we're going to be talking about how to prevent burnout and some protective measures that you can put into practice. And that first point is let it be God's plan, which when we were talking about the other day, you had brought that up, and it's really tied to knowing your purpose. So knowing what God has called you to do, your mission, right? And also knowing your position as collaborator. So that first point of knowing your purpose, and this also came from the podcast. I was just listening to that podcast. I got so much from it. But basically, she was just saying that Jesus was firm and clear on his mission and calling. So he knew when, where, and why he was needed. And a scripture that I really like is Mark 1:38. So it says, Jesus had gone out to pray to an isolated place, and the disciples were looking for him. They were like, hey, people are looking for you. And then he said, let's go somewhere else. Like he just said, we're going somewhere else.
He's like, not right now, please.
He said, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so that I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So he knew the why of why, he knew the purpose, there, right? The mission of why he was needed there. So I wrote, people were looking for him, right? But he knew that he had to leave, and he knew that he had other places to preach, right? Other people to talk to. And so he was on a mission, literally. Right. So
he wasn't in, it references, there's a part in the Bible where he's referenced as a gardener. Why? Because he wasn't gonna sit there and what, it's not like, okay, Mia, I'm gonna deposit a seed in you right now, and I'm just gonna sit right here next to you until I see that seed flourish. He knew where he had to be. He's like, I left my seed, I spread the seed, I said what I had to say. I can't sit still and not and watch it grow. I know eventually I will see the fruit of it, but I'm not going to stand still and wait for it. I got to keep advancing. I got to keep spreading more word. I got to keep spreading more seed. So I think he knew what his purpose was. He knew what he was doing. So he said, I can't stay in just this one village and wait and continue to preach the same word to these people. I've preached what I had to preach to them. Now it's time for me to go somewhere else, preach another word to somebody, and bring what I got to bring somewhere else. So I think that's really, really important to know our why, why we're doing this, where we got to be at a certain point, have clear direction in what we're doing. People were looking for him, but he knew he had to leave. A lot of the times we know we have to be doing, we want to be somewhere, we want to be doing something. It goes back to your own experience. It's like, I know that I got to go to work, but I also know that after work, I have to come home and be mom and be wife and do everything that I got to do over here. I know that I can't just be 24/7 work, it's a multifaceted, so, and you got to know how to manage those and know the purpose behind of why you're doing those things. Because if not, then you're really not doing anything. So I think that's really, really important to know.
I like what you brought up of like, he wasn't going to sit there and just, wait for it. And I feel like I wrote here, when you know your purpose, you won't overextend yourself or take on responsibilities that don't belong to you.
Exactly.
And I feel like whenever we are trying to help someone, we plant that seed, right? We help them. But then it's kind of like we take on their baggage on and like their load as well. When like, I helped you, we talked, right? But I can't stay there and just sit and kind of like take that on.
I can't just baby you all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like going back to the reference of when you plant something, you're not just sitting there watching the plant grow.
Yeah.
You have to water it ever so often, or else it's going to die because it needs water.
Yeah.
But you don't just sit there and waiting for it to sprout. And then, because it's a process, it's going to take time. So you got to know that, Jesus was very, 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 intentional with what he did. He wasn't just like, I'm gonna go over here, go over there. There was an intention behind everything that he did. And I think it's really important that one of the things also going along with knowing your purpose is you have to be intentional. Intentionality will help you not burn out, because you know that you're being intentional with what you're doing. Like you just said with your school, it's like, that that's a non-negotiable, because this is going along with the purpose. This is going along with what God has called me to do. God has called me to be. So I am being intentional with this. Now my job, that's just what I need right now as an extra resource,
Yes,
but
exactly.
That's where you got to learn to put that balance in. So whatever you do, you got to know the reason behind why you're doing it. Am I being intentional with this? Is this really leading me into the purpose that God has driven out for me, what he has set out for me? Because if not, then that's not part of God's plan.
And that's really I like that you said that, because I put here, knowing your purpose, it'll keep you from saying yes to things or people that may hinder your calling, right? And kind of like what happened to me with work. And honestly, like, I'll just be completely honest, I was like, I asked for the full time, because in that moment, like, I was just letting money drive me. I was like, I want to make money. I haven't worked in so long, because like I wasn't working like during the summer. I was like, I want to make money. Like, I'm gonna work full time. But money and like that is just not my priority right now. And even yesterday, I texted my boss and I was like, hey, next week I literally can only work one day because I have this like huge project for school. And he was like, no worries, like we'll talk about it more next week. And he's like, I can get you more hours next semester. And I was like, I didn't even answer, because I was like, I'm not even concerned with hours. I'm not even concerned
fine
with the money. I'm good, because that's just not my priority right now.
So it's knowing priorities. And I think Jesus was on top of the game of knowing his priorities. He's like, you know what? I got these 3.5 years, to do what I have to do, and I can't waste time, And one of the ways that Jesus really found his purpose, and we see him do it throughout his entire time on earth, is being intimate with the Father. And I think that if you have yet to found your purpose, or if you have yet to know what your purpose and identity is, it all derives from a place of
Yes.
intimacy with God as your Father. You see it throughout Matthew 14:23. He said, and after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. You know, he knew to spend that time alone with God.
Yeah.
Mark 6:46. And after he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. Or, you know, Mark 1:35, very early in the morning while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. So it's, the crowd doesn't identify me. God identifies me. God shows me what my purpose is, you know, the purpose of what I'm doing, you know, why I wake up every morning, my motive, you know, where I'm headed. But it's within that intimate time with him. If I'm not intimate, then I'm just going to be sporadic. I'm going to be all over the place. I'm just going to, you know, that's why we need Holy Spirit in our lives. We got to wake up and say, Holy Spirit, you guide me. Holy Spirit, where are you? You know, I'm right here. You know, okay, where do we got to go? We got to go left. We got to go right.
Yeah.
You know, where are we going today? What are we doing today? You know, we got to have that. And it's not just something that I say today and then it's like, all right, checked off my list. It's set for the rest of my life. It's an every single day thing. Something we have to acknowledge on a daily basis. I want to read Matthew 6:5-6. It says, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father, who sees everything, will reward you. That is the importance of intimacy. You know, if you're striving after God's heart, if you're just wanting to please him, you're going to know what pleases him by being intimate with him. You know, in a natural relationship, you know, I may not know Mia's favorite color because I don't have an intimate, in-depth relationship with her. But if you ask me my husband's favorite color or my husband's favorite food or something, I'm going to be able to tell you because we have that intimacy and we are able to know our likes and dislikes, you know. So that's how you will know if you are doing what God has called you to do and who God has called you to be. And going back to that, Jesus acknowledged he needed that time alone with God, with his Father. He needed to have that intimacy with him. He needed to feel, I want to say reassured, because as a child of God, I want to feel reassured. And what reassures me that I'm doing the right thing, what reassures me that I'm going in the right path is just being intimate with him. And when I am intimate with him, I'm not going to be intimidated by lesser things. You know, our mind is a battleground, as we've been learning throughout the series. And if I am not intimate with my Father, I'm not going to know my identity. I'm not going to know, you know, what my purpose is, just as we've been talking. So I'm going to be intimidated. There are going to be thoughts and voices in my head that are going to say, oh no, you can't do this. You're not enough. You're not capable of doing this. And I'm going to be intimidated by it because I'm not intimate. But if you are an intimate person, if you are an intimate son, daughter of God, sure, the voices can come, they can say whatever they want, but I'm not going to be intimidated by it because I know who I am in him. So I think that's something very important for you guys to know, that if you are listening, if you have been struggling with mental burnout, run to God. You know, he's going to steer you in the right way. And we're going to get a little more into it too, but you got to have a group of people that surrounds you and that lead you to that place too whenever you have gone astray, which we'll get a little more into that a little bit later. But
yeah, no, that's really good. And also it's like, if Jesus needed that time alone with the Father, then like who are we to think that we can do it alone or not to, or just or just to go about life thinking that we can just do it on our own.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's really good. And then the other point that like I wanted to touch on was kind of goes right hand in hand with that let it be God's plan, is knowing your position as collaborator.
Yes.
And it's this idea of, so God is inviting you to collaborate with him and with the body of Christ, right? With one another. And I want to reference something that Apostle Enzo said whenever he came and that Monday, and he was teaching the leaders. He said we are collaborators, not co-stars. So you cannot take on something that God assigned you alone, because anything that God is going to give you, it's always going to be bigger than you. It's always going to grow you. It's going to challenge you, right? So you can't expect to take that on alone. And a lot of the times, why sometimes we become so burnt out, it's because we try to do those things alone when that was never the point, right? And a point that I want to make is that we don't serve a small God. We don't serve a mediocre God. So anything that is going to come from him, again, it's always going to be bigger than you. And he's not asking you to be the star or the co-star of the show, right? Or to do it alone. But you have to understand that he's giving you the privilege to collaborate with him. He's inviting you in it, but not for you to try to go before him, or like how you said earlier, try to be the source and do it alone.
Yeah, and a lot of the times I think that's where we make some of our biggest mistakes. I am a control freak, and it is something that I always tell God, Lord, you take control. I am not you. It is you in me. And sometimes when there are things out of hand that I can't control, I'm like, oh my gosh, it stresses me out. It gives me anxiety, which will lead you to burnout. Because we were just talking earlier how I'm a person who likes structure. I like to have some sort of structure. If I don't have it, then I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? But it goes along with this. It's like he creates the plan. He knows what's going on. I'm just a collaborator. I'm not here to control. I'm here to collaborate with him. It's like, all right, I'm here for you to use me in your plan that you have for my life. You want me to go speak to somebody? Sure. Tell me, where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah.
You know,
what do I say?
What do I say? Yeah. And a lot of the times I think us as our in our human state, you know, we try to control things. Oh no, I can't do this. And we start to try and reason. And a lot of the times that's what, again, drives us to a mental burnout, and it makes us inefficient in what we're doing in ministry. Why can't we reach, you know, those thousands of people? Because have you taken a look at your inner self sometimes? Why doesn't my loved one come to church yet? Or why doesn't this certain individual that I've been preaching to or just ministering for so long? It's like, have you taken a look at yourself, you know, in the last, you know, month or so? What have you been doing? Have you just been trying to be co-star with me? Have you been trying to be the main figure? Or have you actually been collaborating with me? Have you allowed me to lead you to do what I have sent you to do, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really important to, you know, like you said, to keep this in mind. He creates the plan, I collaborate. You know, he tells me where to go, I drive that direction. He tells me what to speak, I say it, you know. So it's really, really important to keep that in mind. You know, he's the creator of it all. I just collaborate with him. I'm here. My hands are here. Use them how you want, God. So it's really, really important. Another thing too, like you said, we don't serve a mediocre God. He always has something greater and better for us. And one of the things I want to point out is Colossians 3:2 is it says, think about the things of heaven, not the things of the earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ and God. So when you set your things on the things of above, you know, when it says think about the things of heaven, this translation says think. A lot of the times we fill our thoughts, we fill our mind with how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to pay this? How am I going to do that? Oh my gosh, how am I going to turn this assignment in? And we begin to fill our thoughts with the things of the world, with the things that we've overfilled ourselves with the things we've overextended ourselves. But God never said that. He said, just think of the things of above, you know, think of the heavenly things, not of earth. You know, you already died to this life. When you chose to follow me, you have died to your fleshly desires, to what you want. And it all leads back to knowing your purpose, because if you've died to this earthly life, that means that you have a greater purpose beyond you. So, and the way that I saw it whenever I was thinking about that is the parable of the person who builds their house on sand and the person who builds it on that sturdy rock. So Matthew 7:24 and 27 says, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is a wise person. It's like a person who builds a house on a solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on a bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on a sand. When the rains and floods come and the winds beat against the house, it's going to collapse with a mighty crash. That's our mind. When we decide to build our mind upon the rock that is Christ, upon having intimacy with the Father, what's going to happen? It doesn't matter what storm begins to happen in my mind, I'm going to be able to withstand it. But if from the beginning my foundation is not set correctly, if I have sand as my foundation, if my brain, if my mind, if my soul, my emotions are not set upon the right foundation, any storm is going to come and it's going to make you collapse. Yeah. Any storm is going to come, you're going to be burnt out 100% of the time. So it is important to have the right and proper foundation. You know, maybe till today you've just been running on automatic. Maybe it's just time to take a pause and just take a look. Okay, where am I really founded? What am I really doing? Kind of just doing a reality check for a quick minute and just saying, okay, I need to steer a different direction. Yeah. It's time to go, the other way. It's time to actually sit still for a second. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times I think it's really hard for us to just sit still and quiet and be like, okay, God, what do you want next? Because we're so used to just like everyday motion, the go. So it's like, yeah, God, okay, what's next? And you don't hear anything.
And I feel
that's
like
not okay.
Quiet is just so uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
Sometimes. Silence is so uncomfortable.
Yes.
So to be able to sit there and just be like, okay, what now? It's not natural. Like it doesn't come naturally.
Exactly. Yeah. So you kind of want to feel that. You're like, oh my gosh, why is it so quiet? Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna go back to my daily life and just continue to burn myself out because I just can't sit still for a minute and listen to you. So it's really, really important to have the proper foundation, guys, because if we don't, those storms are going to rage in our mind because believe me, that is the first place they will come. That's where it starts, right? And if we don't have that right foundation, if I'm not set upon God, if I don't have that intimacy, if I don't know that that's where I should run to from the get-go, from the very beginning, then, I'm going to crash down. Yeah. I'm going to be just walking in shambles all around. So,
yeah. And just going back, it's just intimacy. Like, it's just so important. Like yesterday, I just remembered I was working out and I wasn't even focused like on my workout. I was just thinking in my head about the million things that I need to do. Yeah. I'm like, how am I going to turn this in? When am I going to do this? I need to talk to my boss about this and do this. So like, I wasn't even like fully enjoying my workout because I just had so much in my mind. And in that moment, like I was not set in the right foundation. Yeah. Like I was just having all these like stresses and like worries and just like anxious thoughts like coming into my head. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I was like, I saw like on the cover, I don't know how God talks to you or like, God speaks differently to everyone, but like, I was working out and I see like this cover, like on the book, it says, how full is your bucket? and I was like, oh my God.
That's very full.
And it's like, no, but I'm talking kind of like, you kind of like filling yourself in like with the presence in the intimate place. You know what I mean? Exactly. And so I was like in that moment just filling my mind with like all these like anxious thoughts and just feeling overwhelmed. And it's like I haven't even had that like intimate time with the Father. Like sometimes we just wake up, we just go. And it's like the go. Yeah. And then we find ourselves in this place like just overwhelmed and anxious because we haven't even dedicated that time to spend with the Father, right? And to really just focus on the right things.
And it's funny because usually I have yet to find time to try and work out because I'm like, waking up extra early is hard. Waking up on time is already hard enough. And then after work, you're going to have 1,000 different things to do. But it's like you were trying to do something good for yourself. Because at least for me, the way that I see working out it's kind of like a stress reliever. It's like, you know
Yeah.
what, right now I'm just
Me
gonna
too.
go
Yeah.
run a little bit. My body's gonna feel good. Okay, great. And your mind just kind of clears
Yeah.
for a little while.
Oh, it was
and
not
it's like,
happening for
and
me.
then, you know, and it's funny because whenever you are so burnt out or you're overwhelmed or you're just carrying just a bigger
Yeah.
load than you can in that moment, what's happening is that even when you're trying to do something good for yourself, even when
can't even enjoy
you
it.
can't enjoy it, you know. So it's so oh my gosh, yeah, intimacy, having that foundation,
Yeah.
you know, knowing that we do need to take a moment
Yeah.
just to take a chill pill and, you know, take a
Literally.
break.
Yeah, I keep laughing because it's like we're talking about this, and I feel like we've been experiencing this
Yeah.
like so much like in our lives.
Yes.
So I just keep laughing because I'm like, everything that I'm talking about, I'm like, yeah, this is for me.
Yeah.
Also, because
We're
I
living it.
definitely-
We're, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
for sure.
And I know that you mentioned this earlier. The point of having a community
Mm-hmm.
to lean on. Can you like expand on that a little bit? I know we also talked about having an accountability partner
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Yeah, so a lot of the times when I feel burnt out, and it's gonna go back to, you know, my personal experience, it's when I feel really overwhelmed or I feel really anxious or really stressed out, one of the first things that I do is I want my anxiety meal. It's so
Yeah.
bad, but what is that thing that I can ingest in my body that is gonna make me feel good in the moment, you know?
And that's like stress eating.
Stress
I'm the
eating.
sa- yeah.
It's like, oh, you know what? And it's always like your
It's-
comfort food. It's always something
yes.
that's not good for
Not
your
good
body,
at all.
that you're already overwhelmed, you already feel tired. And you know what? Whatever I'm ingesting in that moment, it's going to make me feel even worse.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm thinking, I need this right now. Like, this
Yeah.
is what's going to help calm me down.
And
so
it doesn't matter like what you're ingesting because it's like you're thinking like it can't get any worse than this. At
Yeah.
this point, I don't care.
I really don't care.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, and it's so funny because I'm like, I just need a McDouble, some French
Yeah.
fries from McDonald's, and a Dr. Pepper, and I'm set.
Oh, that's so funny.
But the importance of having a community to lean on is
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's going to hold you accountable. It's like, hey, why are you eating this? Why are you doing this to yourself when you have said that you don't want to do this already?
Yeah.
I think
Man.
my biggest downfall is hot Cheetos. I absolutely
Oh,
love like extra flaming hot Cheetos. I've said this many
Yeah.
times, and I'm like, I'm gonna give it up.
They're
I don't
good.
want it anymore. And I told my husband, like, the last time I bought some, I was like, don't you ever let me buy another bag of these, okay? Say no to me. When I
Yeah.
tell you, hey, can you bring me a bag? Say no to me.
Right.
I'm like, hold me accountable. You know,
Yeah.
and you need to have people to hold you accountable to the changes that you're trying to make in your life. If you're trying to have a lighter load, if you're trying to stay
yeah.
true to your purpose, if you're trying to, you know, run steadily in that race, you know, and get to your goals, what do you have to do? You have to have a community to lean on.
Yeah.
Somebody that can hold you accountable. Hey, I'm really trying to break this sin. I'm trying to stop watching porn. I'm trying to stop fornicating. I'm trying to stop doing XYZ, whatever you find yourself doing in this moment. Find somebody that holds you accountable. It's like, hey, Mia, you know, I'm really struggling with this. Can you, anytime, it's like, I'm just going to reach out to you. And you're like, yeah, sure. Hey, no, remember, don't do this.
Yeah.
Find somebody that you can reach out to at any point in time. You know, ideally, somebody that has overcome whatever
Right.
you're going through.
Exactly. Someone that's
Do-
gonna be a good influence.
Somebody that's going to be a good influence. Look to your pastors, look to your spiritual leaders,
Yeah.
the elders in your church, because they've been through some things and they are going to help hold you accountable. Don't run to somebody that is going through your same thing, because they will be able to identify with you, but they're not going to get you through it. They're not going to be able to lend you a hand and pick you out of that place because they're in that same pit with you. If you are struggling with fornication, or if you are struggling with porn, or if you're struggling with whatever it is, you know, an addiction of any sort, I can't run to an addict if I'm an addict and say, hey, take me out of this addiction, because they're going to say, like,
They can't
you
even
sure?
help themselves.
It's like, yeah, it's like, are you sure you want to get out of this? You don't want to smoke another joint
Right.
together now?
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to, you don't want to go out and party one more time. Come on,
Yeah.
no. You got to find somebody that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to be able to reach out their hand and lift you up and tell you, hey, I've been there. You can get out of there. Yeah. I'm going to hold you accountable. Hey, have you been reading your scripture? Hey, have you been, eating healthier? Have you been drinking your water? Yeah. Have you been, things like that. It's so important to have a community to lean on. And if you don't have one, find one. If maybe you don't attend MDMYF, maybe you don't have a church, maybe this got to you just randomly. If you just stumbled upon this, you know what? You have a community here. You have people that have been through things. Let me just tell you, we've been through some stuff, and we can help you. We can hold you accountable. You can get out of that place. You can get out of mental burnout, but you also, first and foremost, God is number one. Having that relationship, having that ideal relationship with him, running to him in intimacy. And second to that, that's why it's so important to have fellowship within your church, within your community, because again, accountability. I can have somebody that I can run to if I am going through something. Hey, can you back me up in prayer? I'm praying as well, but also back me up. It's so important to have that. Yeah. One of the stories that came to mind when we were speaking about community is Moses. Exodus 17, verse 8 through 15. I want to read it because it says, as long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. So they're in war, So if Moses had his hand up, they had an advantage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were winning. They were, beating the Amalekites. If I'm not mistaken, that's who they were fighting. The Amalekites. So if he had his hand, the Amalekites were being destroyed. But the moment he put his hands down, they were coming against them, and now they were losing the advantage that they had. So it says, but whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. Moses' arms soon became so tired he could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Ur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands, so his hands held steady until sunset. So can you imagine? I mean, you work out, people who work out, or anybody, if you have to hold the staff for this long until the whole victory's over, you're going to grow tired after a while. Your arms are going to get weak. You're going to grow. As humans, we have a lot of things on our plate, but you have to have a community that you can lean on. Moses, if he put his hand down, the Amalekites were going to beat him. They were going to defeat them. They were in the middle of a war, So whatever war you may be going through, maybe you have a war going on in your mind right now. Your thoughts, again, goes back to everything that we've been speaking through this series. You have to have that community that you can lean on and say, hey, I'm not strong enough to hold this staff up anymore. Can you hold my arms up so that we can keep beating, so that I can continue to move forward in my fight, so that I can really overcome this depression, so that I can really overcome my anxieties, the struggles that I'm currently going through. So you can't, do this alone. First, again, God, but also he has set those accountability partners to surround you, those community around you to help you get through those moments. And it's just so important to have somebody to lean on. If I didn't have a community to lean on, I don't know what I would do. Again, working a full-time job, you're having your kids, it's like you have to have a community to lean on. Hey, can you help me watch my kids for this right now? If I didn't have my husband to help me watch my kids, I wouldn't be able to sit down and do this podcast because my kids would be destroying everything in here. They'd be running around, making noise. I wouldn't be able to be sharing this with you. So it's just having somebody that you can lean on. Hey, I got to do this. I know what my purpose is. I know what God has called me to do, but I'm growing weary. I'm growing tired. Can you help lift my hands up? And just like they were able to overcome, you will gain a victory, through the ability that God has given, not just you through that intimate moment, but through that community that has backed you up and that is there to lift you up whenever you're feeling low. So.
Yeah, that's I love that, because one of the things I wanted to talk about is one of the dangers of mental burnout is that you can't think straight. You can't think right. Like nothing makes sense, right? And you can't choose wisely. And because literally, so burnout is mental fatigue, mental exhaustion. And the definition of mental fatigue is a feeling of brain fog, or that your brain isn't functioning properly. So literally your brain isn't functioning properly, so you can't think straight. And an example that I shared with you earlier was when you're driving really early in the morning and it's foggy out, you can't see. You don't know where you're going, right?
Exactly.
And so it impedes you from thinking clearly, and so now all of a sudden you're drifting away from the purpose because you don't know where you're going. And for me, I feel like my mom is my accountability partner, and I think I told you about this. Right, I said earlier I started grad school, started a new job, and then Pastor Nate gave me the privilege to be here and record the podcast. So it was like all these new things coming at me, all exciting, all great. I'm like, I want to do all of it, but I can't. I'm like, so how can I do all of it, right? And it goes back to setting those boundaries and just putting it all, laying it flat, right? And just setting the priorities. But literally I had a moment, I was at home and I was like, Mom, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I was even physically, I was just not feeling well. I was just, because also obviously it's going to manifest physically, right? So I was having these emotional tension headaches, and I'm like, I can't even think straight. Thinking hurts. It's painful when you're burnt out. And so I went to my mom and I was like, Mom, I don't know what to do. I literally don't even, she's like, well, you need create, do you have a calendar? Do you have this? And I'm like, I don't, in that moment, I was like, I don't even know what to create, what to put on the calendar. At this point, can you just do it for me?
Do it for me, please. Tell me what to do.
Help me think. Literally, I'm like, can you help me think? Because I can't. And so in that moment, she calmed me down, right? And she was like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to text so-and-so. You're going to say this. You're going to create a calendar. You're going to come up with a solution. You're going to do this. And so I was like, okay. And so I started calming down, right? And I started thinking clearly again. But then I was telling you earlier, literally I was at Starbucks yesterday and I just started crying, and I literally shut down my laptop because I'm like, I can't even right now. I can't think right now. So it can be dangerous, right? Because you're not making wise decisions.
Exactly.
And something that we also talked about is you're settling for less.
Exactly.
Right. And something that I wrote about is you're no longer striving for more, because you've already done so much. So the small things, the mediocre things are going to fulfill you. Because striving for more requires mental and physical capacity. So how can you strive for more if you've already extended your human capacity?
You've already exhausted all the strength that you had. You've exhausted any little bit of power that you had left. You already used it up. So now it's you find yourself in falling back into old patterns. You find yourself hanging out with the people that you said you would never hang out with before. You find yourself doing things that you had already overcome, but now you're so mentally exhausted that you're just like, you know what? Whatever. You know, you just kind of hit that whatever mode, and you're just like, okay. And that's what mental burnout does.
Whatever mode,
It's and going back to the story we just read in Exodus, what would have happened if Moses didn't have, Aaron and Ur to lift up his arms in that moment? They would have settled for defeat. You know, you can't settle for defeat when God has already given you a victory, and that's something that's so important. You cannot settle for less. You cannot stand still where you are now simply because you have grown weary. That's why community is such an important thing, because they'll make you aware. It's what are you doing?
They'll call you out.
I need somebody to call me out every once in a while when I'm going crazy. It's hey, you're not going the right direction. You're doing something that's not okay. We need to be called out. We need that in our lives. Jesus called out so many people, it's we needed Jesus, so you can't settle for less. Your mind is so burned out. You're all over the place. that you're just like, you know what? I don't even care if I come out victorious out of this. I give up. No, God has a guaranteed victory for your life, for your ministry, for your marriage, for your relationships. You just have to not settle for less. You have to grab hold of the word that God has given you. You know, not only lean on him, but lean on the people that God has placed around you, and know that there is a guaranteed victory. The victory is set. You know, the biggest victory was him beating death on that cross. You know, we have that victory to uphold and say, nope, I have a victory. I have a victory, you know. But whenever we're so worn out, you can't, like you said, you can't think straight. It's like you're driving in the mist and you're like squinting your eyes and you're like, where am I going? You can't see. And you end up, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to be okay with staying here. Even though I had a few more miles to go. I was right around the corner from my destiny. I was right around the corner from finishing that book that God told me to write. I was right around the corner from finishing my degree. I was around the corner. You know, don't settle with just staying around the corner and just peeping through and seeing the greatness that God has on the other side. You know, step into it. You know, if you got to lean on somebody, lean on somebody. If you got to, you know, say, hey, push me. I need that extra push. Okay, here you go. And you're going to get to that victory. But, you know, don't settle for defeat whenever you know you have that victory in store for your life.
Definitely. And ask for help. Like, if you need help, I feel like sometimes we don't want to ask for help because we don't want to seem weak.
It's a pride thing.
It's a pride thing, yeah. And we also don't want to let maybe people into our personal lives and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this.
Yes.
But if you need help, please ask for help.
Yes.
Right. And be able to lean and find a community that's going to support you through it, and one that's going to keep you accountable, right? And kind of what we said earlier, don't go to someone that's gonna keep you in that same place, or someone that maybe isn't gonna be a good influence.
Exactly. It's like, oh no, this is my best friend. But you're not noticing that your best friend is also divorced. They're right there with you, you know? They're going through a divorce. You're trying to fight through it, trying not to. And then it's like, nah, it's okay. Just leave him. Divorce is fun. We'll have fun. No, you know? Things along the lines of that, you know? So you can't find somebody to help you that's in the same boat that you are. You got to find somebody that's already on the other side of that's on shore, and it's like, hey, you know, here you are, let me tug you down here. I got you. So it is so important. And I think another one of our points, you know, kind of leaning on what we've been talking, knowing your purpose, having your community, is, like you said, ask for help, acknowledging your human capacity. We are human. We can ask for help, you know. We cannot do it all, you know, we can't control it all. And, you know, and Jesus himself acknowledged his human capacity. He himself was like, all right, this is to where my humanity gets me. Human capacity is the sum of a person's abilities, including their intellectual, physical, mental strength, and their mental capacity. One of the stories that I want to reference, and just as kind of as we wind down, is Matthew 26, and I'm going to read from verse 36 to 45. It says, "Then Jesus led his disciples to an orchard called the Oil Press. He told them, 'Sit here while I go and pray nearby.' He took Peter, Jacob, John with him. However, an intense feeling of great sorrow plunged his soul into agony." So we see that Jesus was struggling. He was, you know, battling within himself too, just as we all do. And he said to them, "My heart is overwhelmed and crushed with grief. It feels as though I'm dying. Stay here and keep watch with me." Then he walked a short distance away, and overcome with grief, he threw himself face down on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if there is any way you can deliver me from this suffering, please take it from me. Yet what I want is not important, for I only desire to fulfill your plan for me." Then an angel from heaven appeared to strengthen him. Later, he came back to his 3 disciples and found them all sound asleep. So this is not the kind of accountability partners you want, that are going to be asleep whenever you tell them to stay up and intercede for you and pray for you. And he says, "Could you not stay awake with me for 1 hour, just even 1 hour? Keep alert and pray that you'll be spared from the time of testing. Your spirit is eager enough, but your humanity is weak." Our humanity is weak. You know, Jesus is acknowledging here, humanity is weak. Then he left them for a second time to pray in solitude. He said to God, "My Father, if there is not a way that you can deliver me from the suffering, then your will must be done." So now he's kind of just getting more into like, all right, I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do it. But this is him in his most human nature. He's just like, God, Father, if I don't have to do this, please just let it pass me, you know? He's acknowledging his human capacity, you know, up to this point. He's done amazing, tremendous things. And he knows he has his purpose clear, what he has to do. That's why he keeps acknowledging, if it can, but if not, your will is first before mine. So when he returned again to his disciples, he awoke them saying, "Are you still sleeping? Don't you know the hour has come for the Son of Man to be handed over to the authority of sinful men? Get up, let's go, for the betrayer has arrived." So this is the Passion Translation. And there was, in verse 44 it says, "So he left them and went away to pray the same prayer for the third time." So Jesus, him going up there 3 times, it's showing me that he was weary. He was anxious. Even in the very beginning, he said, I feel like I'm here, and it says it's the oil press. I'm being pressed. You know, I'm about to go through this. I feel this grief that is crushing down upon me. You know, watch with me, he's telling them. You know, I feel like as though I'm dying. Can you imagine? I know a lot of us have been through certain situations where we have felt this way, and we have just been like, I feel like there's this weight on my shoulder, all this anxiety, all this pressure,
that's how
you know.
it starts. That's what leads to burnout.
That's exactly what leads you to burnout. But Jesus, you know, acknowledged the capacity that he had. He said, "You know what? I can't avoid this, God. If it's your purpose, I'm going to fulfill it, and I'm going to do what I have to do. But I know that you're going to be with me through it all. I know that even when it seems like you're not with me, when it's silent and it's quiet and these people are mocking me and saying, 'Oh, you're the Son of God, get yourself off of there.'"
That's the noise.
That's
like, those are the
exactly
voices that come, right?
It's the voices that are going to keep coming. You know, he was human. Another really human moment. He was mad. He grew mad at times. He flipped tables. In Matthew 21:13, it says, "It is written," he said to them, "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." And in that moment, you know, he was flipping the tables. You know, he took out his whip. So Jesus he had a very human moment. You know, he grew mad because he's like, this isn't what my Father has called to do with his temple. What are you guys doing? You know, so he never denied that he was human. But he also knew that there was a supernatural thing within him, which was, I am the Son of God, and he's called me to do something greater. There's a greater purpose. And he stayed true to that. So it's like, I think us, a lot of the times we overtake more than we take on more than what we can handle, simply because we don't acknowledge that we're human. You know, you are a human. We have a certain capacity, and you are going to burn yourself out if you take on more than you can handle. The word says that he won't give you more than you can handle, but when you take on more than you can handle, that's a whole different story. I was reading to Mia earlier, where is it? Where the word of God says that he's not going to give you more than you can handle, but also he's the one that's looking through. He's, you know, kind of like placing his filtering, you know, kind of what's going on. Okay, this is what you can take. This is what you can't. But that's God. That's him looking, okay, this is what Joanna can handle. This is what Mia can handle. This is what you can handle. But there's a difference between God seeping through, filtering through what we can and can't do, and a difference between what we tell ourselves that we can and can't do. Then you're going to end up in burnout. You're not going to burn out if you're steadily doing what God is telling you to do. You're going to burn out if you take on more than you can handle. And then you're like, no, God is giving me so much more to handle than what I can. No, you're giving yourself. You did it to yourself. You took on more on your plate than what you could. You you sat in front of a 20-ounce steak that you know you can't finish, and you're trying to stuff yourself with it, and you end up with a bloated belly on the verge of puking because you can't finish what you have in front of you. So it's so important to acknowledge your human capacity. Jesus acknowledged his human capacity. He said it himself, if it's possible, please, let it. But if not, let it be your purpose. But again, he knew what the purpose and will of God was. There's a difference, again, whenever we choose to say, okay, I know your will, but I'm still going to do whatever I want. No, that's not how it works. So it's so important to acknowledge our capacity, as humans, and understanding what God has made us capable for. So it's like he's made you capable for certain things, to do certain, to work in a certain area of the ministry, but you can't go beyond that. So
I love that. Something that I guess as we wrap up, or I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything else, but something that I studied a little bit in one of my classes, which I mentioned earlier. We were reading this book about the Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath and resting, and we touched on the topic of burnout and all the things, is this idea of finding time to be.
Yes.
And it's literally finding a time for you to just simply exist outside of whatever other roles you play in society. Like, yes, you're a mother, a father, a wife, husband, daughter, son, sister, brother, friend, student, right, etc. The list goes on. So whatever roles you play in life, including those roles in church, so you are all of those things, but who are you standing alone?
Yes.
Who is Mia? Who is Joanna, right? So what things allow you to be you to the core of who God created you to be? And I think this is something for you guys to do at home. Maybe write a list of those things, and it's simply just writing down things of like, okay, what brings me joy? What fills me up, right? And maybe you take a day to do those things. And maybe a few hours, right? And you protect those things with boundaries, which is something important, right? And it's literally just finding that time to just exist and kind of thinking like, okay, what is filling me up, right? So I think that's really important, because I feel like we can get, our identity can kind of like get mixed up in all of these like other roles that we play, and it's like, okay, it's so easy to lose parts of ourselves, and that can happen through burnout too.
And I think a very important thing to acknowledge is that God gave us free will, and he can protect you from the things that he gives to you and from what the burden that he's placing on you. But he can't protect you out of those things that you have put upon yourself. You're going to go through a process. He's going to be with you, and he's going to be on the other side, and he's like, yeah, I'm here waiting for you, but you're going to endure that process. You're going to have to endure that process. He can't. It says, this is a verse that I was looking for earlier, 1 Corinthians 10:13. It says, we all experience times of testing, which is normal for every human being. It's normal for us to be tested, for us to go through certain situations. But God will be faithful to you. He will screen and filter the severity, nature, and timing of every test. That is, God's faithfulness and grace will limit the severity of every test and prevent you from being tested beyond your ability to cope. But God cannot limit the severity of every test that we're going through if it's a test I'm putting myself through, So it's like, oh no, I can do it. I can do it. And bring it on. No, he's not. And then we find ourselves angry against God, burnt out in the ministry, because we're like, oh, this person is so blessed, but I'm not blessed. I've been here XYZ years. Why is this happening to me? Because you are doing things in your own ability. So I love the word of God, how it just breaks it down. And this is not even something that's, it's in the word. If you just take your time to read it, digest it, indulge in it. It says, that is, God's faithfulness and grace will limit the severity of every test and prevent you from being tested beyond your ability to cope. Unlimited grace is available for every believer who faces hardships, temptations, and seasons of difficulty, so that you can bear that. but it's when it comes from him,
Yeah.
in him. But outside of that, God's like, he's not going to leave you because he's not a bad father. And I'm not trying to say that he's just going to, all right, you did it. But it's like, you kind of do things to yourself,
Yeah.
there are self-inflicted process that we put ourselves in simply because we think we can, simply
We
because
self-sabotage.
we self-sabotage ourselves, and you find now yourself in this point of a mental burnout, which when your mind is burnt out, everything else in your life is burnt out.
Yeah.
You're not going to be fruitful. You are not going to be able to reproduce anything because you're burnt out. Your roots are dead. What are you going to produce? So you have to acknowledge, if today you're listening and you've gotten to this point, you have to acknowledge, take an inner look at yourself and say, I have burnt out. I am burnt out. That's why I can't produce. That's why I'm stuck in this situation that I've been going through for so long, because I have found myself burnt out, because I haven't been running to the correct source. So, how to prevent that? Again, back to our points, you have to let it be God's plan. You got to know your purpose. You got to know your position as a collaborator. He's the one that's creating the plan. You collaborate.
Yes.
You have to have that community to lean on, and you gotta know that you are human. You gotta acknowledge that human capacity and know that, yes, God is not gonna give you more than you can bear, but also what he's giving to you. Don't self-inflict pain to yourself. I know sometimes it's hard to make the right choice, but if that person's not for you, let him go. If that job's not for you, let it go. That career, whatever it is, let it go. I rather live the remainder 60, wait, how, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'm going to live to 90, 100. I don't know. But 60, 50 years, whatever you have left to live it joyful, live it happy. Don't live in a state of burnout. Don't allow the rest of your life to be a constant burnout cycle. You can't just be, again, going back to that reference, in that car burning out your tire because you're just gonna be stuck there forever. You have a car, you have this vehicle that can take you to where you have to be, but you have to acknowledge who that driver is and who has to be the one in control of that. So
I love that. So kind of as we wrap up for today's episode, I want to ask you, Pastor Joe, how has the series Tormente impacted you?
It's really, again, spoken into my life just because I'm in a season where I have been burnt out, where I'm not just speaking to you guys of something that I'm reading off of a book. I'm speaking to you of something that I'm living on a daily basis, that on a daily basis I have to make certain choices to, get out of certain situations, to not feel burnt out, taking all of these things. Whenever we were writing these things down and speaking of these things, preparing this, it was God speaking to us first,
Yeah.
So it has been great help just to, put into perspective. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your mind. Take care of the place where everything begins. Everything begins as a thought. And if my thoughts are weak, and if my thoughts are weary, and if there's a battle going on constantly, and if I don't know how to overcome it, I'm not going to get to where I need to be. I'm not going to be the best mom that I can be. I'm not going to be the best wife that I can be. So it has really been really great to just put things into perspective again, because again, sometimes we can just kind of fall into a routine. So just every single word that has been brought, everything that we have been learning. I'm a person who, as a young adult, I struggled a lot with my mental health. I struggled with depression. I struggled with anxiety. I tried to commit suicide, as a 15-year-old. So there was a battle going on in my mind, for the longest time. So it's like, it is so important, to keep, that mental health good, because not because you overcome something means that it's not going to attack you again. It will continue to attack you. You just now have different weapons and you know how to fight it. And again, you have a foundation. Not because you have a firm foundation means that the storm's not going to come. Again, like we just read, God is faithful. He's with you through that, but you have to have that firm foundation, so it has been tremendous help for my life, just putting things back into perspective, just saying, hey, you really got to guard your mental health, because everything kind of derives from there. You know, if you have a healthy mind, you'll have a healthy body, you'll feel more at ease, more at peace, because if your mind is all jumbled up, then all of your body, all of your nervous system is sending all of that to everything else. And then you just feel all the stress and anxiety at all times. So it has been so good for me. It has just been, again, put things into perspective again. It's so nice to just, you know, it's kind of like God just kind of slapping you across the face and saying, it's like, hey, this is what you need in this season.
I was just about to say that, like, whenever you've been talking, I'm like, I feel like I'm getting slapped in the face, because this is literally what I needed.
So it's just so good. And I think it's something that the church in general needs, not just Mundo de Milagro y Fe, but the church as a whole needs this. You know, you need to, a lot of the struggles that are going on, it's just because the church hasn't been able to identify as what God has called us to be. We've just let things happen, and it's like, there is still power in prayer. You can still lift the dead. You can still work these wonderful miracles, but we just have been struggling so much in our mind and in that battleground that we haven't been able to be who God has called us to be. So I think it's so important, and I think it's such a powerful message that, you know, God spoke to our pastor, and, you know, it's so powerful to just be able to bring this to this generation and today and day. And it's great, and I think it's gonna really help so many people.
So again, we want to invite you guys to spend that time with us and be a part of what God is doing through this series. And again, it's Sunday at 10 a.m. Bring someone with you, even if you're like, well, maybe it's not for me. Maybe you know someone who's battling, right? That God can bless through this word. So again, we invite you tomorrow, Sunday at 10 a.m. as Pastor Nick continues to preach his Tormente series. So as we close for the episode, Pastor Joe, I wanted to ask if you wanted to go ahead and pray over them.
All right. So God, I thank you for this moment that we had. I thank you for, you know, me and I to being able to bring this word to your people. I thank you for the viewer that is on the other side of the screen. I pray, God, that whatever mental burnout that they have been experiencing, Father, that you are able to bring that mental clarity upon them, God, that they are able to put their priorities in place, Father, that they can find that community that they need, Father, that they are able to find their purpose in you, God. And that we can just run to you freely, Father, that whatever was obstructing them from having that relationship with you that really allowed them to understand who they were in you, God, we break it off of their lives. We declare that those mental battles that they have been struggling with up to today, Father, that clarity begins to come upon them, that peace begins to pour out over their lives, God, that every struggle that derived from that mental battle, Father, whether it was an addiction, whether it was, you know, thoughts of suicide, depression, anxieties, Father, we call it to cease in the name of Jesus, and we declare that your power, Father, just flows through this message to them, Father, and it brings the healing that they need. In the powerful name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. We love you guys. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Blessings.